What's up? My name's Ethan,
I'm Ben.
I'm Kabir.
and today we are recording our 17th episode where we're going to be talking about all things social media. But before we get started, we have a very special guest. Debbie, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Debbie Strauss. I am a licensed clinical social worker. I'm an independent contractor and I work with a practice called North Suburban Psychological Associates. And we are located in Northbrook. And I see teenagers, young adults, and adults in my practice.
Thank you. So, thank you for coming on our show today. And we've kind of alluded to social media and talked about it a little bit in every episode, but today we're kind of really going to talk about it a lot because it's one of the most important things, and I guess one of the most detrimental things to a lot of people's mental health. So, the first thing we want to kind of talk about is what does social media mean to us? So, I think it's good if we go around and say, what does social media mean to us? Because maybe it's different, maybe it's similar. So for me, social media is just a way that people can intake others' viewpoints in a convenient and rapid manner. Kabir, Ethan, you want to go next?
Yeah,
Yeah, I would
okay,
say,
you can go.
oh, sorry. I would say that social media is really just a platform where people are able to exchange ideas and, um, again, I agree with your definition of taking in others' viewpoints, but I think it's also about, collaboration and just um, the exchange of ideas, even more than uh, like uh, it's really just a medium of shared contact and where people can learn and grow together, but also of course there are negative consequences too.
hmm for me, I kind of see social media being like a personalized, like highlight reel. Like when you open up a social media app, you know you're getting the best, most tailored content that will interest you forever, how long you're going to be on the app. And I think that's one of the downfalls we'll talk about. But I think that's a good way to put it. It's like very personalized. It's kind of like a highlight reel. Debbie, do you want to?
Question too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think social media is any kind of platform where people can share their own content and also receive other people's content. So, and I think it can be used for a lot of positive things, but also a lot of really negative things.
Yeah, and I think it's really, good that Ethan talked about how personalized it is. Because a lot of times I think people view social media as kind of like it was 10 to 15 years ago, where you just post things, you'd have friends, see what others are posting. But now you can on platforms like TikTok, Instagram, you can scroll through and that you can be on the app for 3 hours and not have any contact with anyone. And we'll kind of talk about the pitfalls of that later. But that kind of leads into the next segment of why do people love social media? And obviously, me, Ethan, and Kabir, I don't know about you, W, but we're on social media a lot as teenagers. So I guess the next question I want to ask is why do you love it? Ethan, Kabir, do you have anything?
I think I like social media because I feel like it's kind of turned into like a platform with a lot of short form content. So, someone with a short attention span can kind of open it up, start scrolling, and those constant hits of dopamine. But I think that's also one of the downfalls. But I think that's why a lot of kids kind of turn to social media versus like TV shows and movies, and that's kind of where I think this like transition came from.
Yeah, and I think one of the best parts of social media for me is the fact that, platforms like TikTok and Instagram are very quickly able to gauge what your interests are,
Mm.
the types of people that you might be interested in interacting with. And so, to add on to the like personalization point that Ethan made, it's a very good way of ingesting content that suits your lifestyle, suits your hobbies, and also finding other people who might be, who might have similar interests to you, and through the comment section, having fun conversations like that.
Yeah, Debbie, in your experience with teens and working with teens, maybe who are in social media in a positive or negative way, why do they love it? Why, from a psychological standpoint, why do you think teens are so affectionate for social media?
Yeah, well, I think teens crave validation. Teens crave acceptance. teens crave social connection. And I think that social media provides an opportunity for all of that. And so I think those are some of the really great ways that it can be used. But I think that some of those things also there's a downside to those things, and we can get into that later. But I think that it really, teens are developing their social identities, and I think it gives them a place where they feel like they belong sometimes. It also is a place where they can share their own ideas and creativity and maybe try things out that they wouldn't necessarily be comfortable doing in person. It sort of, I think, is feels like a safe place to do that.
Yeah, definitely. I have an interesting question about sort of like the validation thing. So, like, why what is the effect of receiving kind of numerical or specific feedback on, on social media, like your appearance, your relationship, your status, like through things like likes, views, and comments? So those are kind of ingenuine because a lot of times, like when you click a heart button on social media, it's it's much less work than actually giving someone a compliment in real life, and it's obviously not dependent on the content. So like how does that affect somebody if they're not getting what they want, or even on the other end, getting like too many likes and things like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it can really impact one's self-esteem, both positively and negatively. I think people can, again, you are hearing from people who don't know you in real life, right? So I think in general, and I'm not sure if this is really answering your question, but in general, um, somebody that you know giving you validation about something in person, I think is so much more authentic and actually feels better than getting a bunch of likes from people that you don't know. But I think that, I mean, it's about the reward system and it's about the dopamine hits. And so, kids are constantly checking to see how many people liked their photo and how many people commented on it, positive or negative. So it's part of the system that keeps getting kids to go back and check, and then it becomes sort of a compulsion.
Mhm. I think also another cool way to look at this is like, from the viewer standpoint, not the one who's posting. I guess my question is like, how does social media encourage kids to become like spectators of like other people's lives rather than like participating in their own and being happy with what they have? And how do you kind of see that play out?
Yeah, I think it's really dangerous because I see, first of all, I have three kids of my own and they range in age from 25 to 18. And so I've seen differences with my 25-year-old to my 18-year-old and how important social media has become. But, and I hope my 18-year-old doesn't watch this and feel offended, but those kids do not go anywhere without making it a photo opportunity.
Mm,
And I find myself just personally saying, put the phone down, just be in the moment, experience what's going on. It doesn't have to be a photo op for other people. Live your life for yourself. But I think that's really hard in this day and age for people to do.
yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, Ethan.
Yeah, for sure. Um, and I think that also like with social media, the key is like finding balance. So I know it's kind of hard to like quantify it, but what is like a balanced social media usage? What do you see that being?
Yeah. I mean, I certainly can't give a number of hours that I think somebody should or shouldn't be on social media. And I think it also depends on the person and it depends on what you're using it for. Because again, there's this tendency. I mean, I have a tendency to say like social media is bad.
Mm,
It's the bane of our existence. It's ruining generations. But I think also there are really some positive uses for it. So I think it depends how you're using it. Um, but I certainly think if you are a kid who comes home from school, gets on your device, and is scrolling from the time you get home from school till the time you go to bed, that's not good um, for a variety of reasons. So I think that, you've got to have a balance between real life activities.
mm,
So hopefully, you're finding ways to engage with friends outside of school. Hopefully, you're finding activities that you enjoy. Hopefully, you're studying. Hopefully, you're sleeping. But too much, device use is getting in the way of that.
Yeah, and spending all that time on social media, it's bound to, encourage kids to develop a digital identity that, is often completely separate from their, in-person or real life identity. So, my question is kind of like, how have you seen, the desire to cultivate that digital identity affect a person's like real life identity? Like, have the content that they consume online, like how has that influenced them to like kind of change parts of themselves to, fit an online community, and what are the potential consequences in real life?
Yeah. I mean, I see a lot of kids in my practice, a lot of teenagers who compare themselves to other people.
Yeah.
And that's human nature to compare ourselves to other people, but it gets exacerbated with social media. So I think one of the things that I will say, one of the pitfalls is when you look at somebody's social media profile or go onto their page, I'm not even probably using the right terminology, but um, when you see what somebody else puts out there, you have no idea if that is real or not. And so you're comparing yourself with something that may not even be real. And so I think that that's really harmful because kids start to believe, that they should have this many friends, or they should be wearing this type of clothes, or they should be participating in this type of activity. And if they're not doing it, they feel really bad about themselves. So I think that we have to be really, really careful about what we believe we're seeing on social media.
Yeah, definitely. And I just from my perspective, I don't know if this speaks to Kabir or Ethan's experiences, but for me, it's not, like the clothes or the thing. But for me, who's more focused on like academics and things like that. When I open social media, I see people who are doing like crazy things, bragging about whether it's real or not, having like amazing internships and starting amazing companies, and you have no idea whether it's real or not. So when on our last episode we featured another great therapist named Becky Showman, and we talked about academic pressure. So when you have all this comparison layer from social media layered onto already a lot of academic pressure, I think that can be destructive for a lot of people. And I think I've seen that a lot in my friend groups. And I think that's kind of another thing that I would define social media as. It's just a medium for an insane amount of comparison, more than ever before. And that
Yeah.
can be dangerous. And, we talked about it a lot. Comparison is a thief of joy. We've said that a lot. But, you know, for something that seems so negative, like just from a psychological standpoint, in your experiences, how does it become so addictive?
Well, it was created to be that way. I don't know if you guys have watched the documentary The Social Dilemma. I think it's called The Social
I
Dilemma.
think I've heard of that. Yeah.
Yeah, it came out several years ago, and they talked about it's social media platforms are created to get you to keep coming back. And so, there's this dopamine, like a loop. And the rewards are unpredictable. So people keep going back to see if they're going to get a dopamine hit. And it just and there's also, you had talked about like it's about the algorithm. So if you like something on social media, the program, and I couldn't explain this if my life depended on it from a technological standpoint, but the algorithms are set up so that like you keep getting content that matches things that the computer knows that you like, right? And so you just keep going back for more and more. And so the people who created these programs, I've seen them interviewed, and they say, we would never let our kids have devices as teenagers. We would never allow our kids to go on these platforms because they are so dangerous, because they just keep you engaged constantly.
Yeah. I think, it's funny because when I'm on my phone and like I search something up on Google even when I'm like on vacation or in different places, I open up TikTok. Like the algorithm is literally tailored to like the place I'm in, the things I'm searching up. And it's like kind of creepy. But I think the fact that it's like very personalized and very tailored to everyone with the algorithm is definitely why it's so addictive. But also, I think we kind of mentioned like the short form content. So kids just constantly scrolling until they find a good video and that like really cheap dopamine. From your perspective, do you see a lot of kids coming in with possibly like attention disorders or struggling to stay focused? And do you think social media is kind of causing that amongst teens today?
Absolutely. And I think teens and adults, I think that this whole generation, I mean, all of the people who use social media, because I can see it with myself and my peers, and we didn't grow up with it, but I think everybody's attention spans have decreased. And I would hate to say that, I mean, there are kids who really have attentional issues, kids who have ADHD, and that is the way that their brain is wired. And so, that's different, but this certainly can exacerbate something like ADHD, and it can certainly make people who aren't prone to have attention issues have attention issues. I think it's hard for kids now to focus on watching a full length TV show or
Yeah.
movie without picking up their phone. And I think that that's really sad, or probably listen to a teacher or be in a lecture. So I think that's a real problem.
Yeah, and the I really relate to Ethan's point about like personalization once again. But I think the fact that social media is so personalized really just leads to a kind of a crisis of identity for a lot of people, because when they see content about people achieving like extraordinary things that, maybe they're missing in their own lives, social media is kind of cruel in that it pushes that type of content that makes you feel left out, that makes you feel inferior. And so it kind of convinces you to overcompensate for something in your life. Like if you're missing, some academic achievement, you're going to try harder to perform or appear a certain way online. And I think that's really been damaging in my own life, just seeing all people on social media and their achievements and trying to match up to that. It just creates a really inauthentic, version of oneself for it, like in general.
That breaks my heart to hear that. I know it's true, but hearing you say that, Kabir, that really makes me sad.
Yeah, just to kind of, unpack this personalization more and the algorithm itself. So to sometimes Ethan Kabir's dismay, I talk about how the algorithm works a lot during the episodes, but I guess I have the license to talk about it a little bit more today. So these algorithms truly, and this is not a joke, they know you better than you know yourself. That what they do, these machine learning algorithms, is they predict content that's going to yield the most engagement. So a lot of times, and engagement is how they make money. These social media companies, they make money, and they're very good at it. They're geniuses, but they use it in a bad way. So when they try, and obviously for engagement, if more content is being engaged with, they can sell more ads. That's how they make money. So a lot of times the content that gets the most engagement is the most damaging and extreme content. So if they can push out extremist content that makes people feel isolated, it has a higher likelihood of being engaged with. So the algorithm is based on isolating people, playing to their fears and their darker side, and selling that to advertisers for money. That's how it works. It's very bad, and unfortunately, it's not even illegal. But they're geniuses at it, but they use it in a very, very bad way. So I think it's important for parents and kids watching to understand, like, yeah, you might feel like you're getting a lot of content, but these social media algorithms are not designed to help you. Like if you're like the old saying, if you're not paying for the product, you are the product. They're using you to make money. So I think I'm not saying, you have to like quit Instagram, quit TikTok. There are obviously good things, but I think it's important that we kind of raise awareness and talk about this because I don't think a lot of people understand.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And I
I
think
wanted,
also,
I mean, I think, oh, I'm sorry.
no, you can go.
Go
Go
ahead,
ahead.
Bill.
I was just going to say, I mean, it's fascinating what you're saying and it's terrifying. But you did make a point about, you mentioned parents. And I think that parents really, especially of younger kids, younger teenagers, really need to be aware of what their kids are doing online. I cannot stress that enough. I think it is really important to have parents overseeing, monitoring, and kind of knowing what they're looking for. So I think parents need to sort of be educated in this too. I think a lot of parents are just like, I don't know, that wasn't in my generation. I don't understand it, but I think it's in parents' best interest to try to understand it and be kind of vigilant, especially in the early years of kids being on these things.
Mhm. Well, I just kind of wanted to transition into, we've been talking about the problem a lot. We kind of like to end episodes with kind of like helpful tips or coping mechanisms. So I guess I can start and give one. Something that's kind of helped me is when I'm doing work or studying and I'm tempted to pick up my phone and go on social media. I kind of think of this analogy. It's like when you're eating a salad, right? You know it's good for you and you want to eat that, but the second someone offers you an Oreo, you're going to want to eat it. It's going to taste really good. And then when you try going back to salad, it's going to be very not good and tastes very gross, right? So I think when you're working and you're studying, you have to understand that the second you go pick up your phone, you're kind of thrown off. You're kind of tempted to do that for the next few hours, and it makes it even harder to get back to what you're doing. So I guess that's kind of a coping mechanism that I have.
Mhm. For me, I think, often we're tempted to continue like scrolling on social media and just coming across these random reels that often just are a detriment to our lives. So I think one of the solutions I've found is to counteract that kind of negative cycle, actively seeking out like productive types of content, like just like lifestyle stuff and maybe even like academic content that generally like it can offset the negative effects of scrolling in a really, really positive way from what I've seen. And just making a conscious effort to seek out certain beneficial types of content instead of engaging harmfully in this cycle of scrolling and negative social interactions online. I think that can really benefit a person.
Yeah, for me, I think it's important to recognize that social media and scrolling, like, it's not going to go anywhere ever. Like, they're trillion-dollar companies. They're here to stay, unfortunately or fortunately. But I think it's important for people to recognize that and find balance, right? Like for me, I'm never gonna like we could go tell 1,000 people about the like how social media algorithms are designed to cause mental health issues and worsen their lives, and like less than 1% of them would even consider like lowering the time that they spend. So for me, I think it's about raising awareness and from an individual perspective recognizing that this is like no, this is not good for me, and recognizing when you're scrolling like yeah, I want to do this right now, I need a break, and that's okay. If you want to take a break scrolling, it's kind of like how people take breaks now, that's okay, but you have to recognize that it's not good for you. And kind of yeah, and when I like Kabir's point, like if you find good content, like for me, this probably doesn't relate to a lot of people, but for me, if I find like an interesting like math problem or something like that that I find on there, maybe I'll take a break and think about it, and that's better than scrolling. So that probably doesn't help many people, my tip, but but yeah, I think it's think about it from an individual standpoint, recognizing how dangerous it is.
Yeah. Debbie, do you have any like coping mechanisms?
Well, I mean, you all make really great points. And I think you've probably thought about this more than a lot of your peers because it's something that you're interested in bringing awareness to. But I think a couple of points. Yeah, social media is here to stay. So we can't say this is bad. We shouldn't use it. We should use it because there are some really good things that it can be used for. So I think you have to figure out what the good things are. I think that I always talk about conscious consumption. And so, again, it's like choosing the times that you're going to use it and choosing what you're going to look at. And really, it's very hard for kids to put limits on themselves. But I mean, I think it's something important to learn. Um, so I think those would probably be my biggest points as well.
Yeah, and you
I was
mentioned
just, I was,
limits.
I was just gonna say something, Ethan. I'm sorry. I was
Yeah,
thinking
no.
about your example with the salad and the Oreo.
Uh-huh.
It's not like salads are good and Oreos are bad
Yeah.
necessarily, but there has to be a balance. So you can eat an Oreo sometimes, but you can't do it all the time, or it becomes bad for you. So I think it's just about making healthier choices.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Ethan,
and a very practical tip that I feel like kind of helps me is like with the screen time app on the iPhone. My mom used to put those restrictions on and then she took them off. But recently I've kind of asked her like, hey, can you put these limits on? And not even when I ask like, hey, can I get a little bit more time? Like only she knows the password, so she can't. She won't like give me more time. I feel like setting those limits on your phone. I think that's very helpful. And then something else I think is like you have to understand that this short form social media content is very it's low level dopamine. I think human beings, that's there's a time and place for that, but I think as human beings, we're really cut out for like real dopamine, which is like relationships, health, religion, stuff like that. So I think if you can spend, you don't completely have to cut out social media, but make more time for those long-term things that will give you more fulfillment. I think that's probably the most helpful tip that I can offer up.
I
And
agree with you. And I was going to say, I think we're talking a lot about how to not do something, but I think, how to not go on to, your social media apps and how to limit your time. And all those things sound sort of negative and they sound so hard. But the easiest thing is to do something else. And like you're saying, to engage in real, meaningful connections and there's so many things that we talk about in terms of getting dopamine. There's sleeping well, there's exercise, there's human connection is the most important thing for people. And I think we just don't people don't get enough of that anymore in person. But I think if you start to do that more, you realize how positive it is and you realize how good that feels. And so the more you do these things that aren't on your devices, the more you may want to do those things.
mhm. And I think on a more fundamental level too, like even while you're on social media, if that does eventually compel you, if you're compelled to scroll, I think something to keep in mind is the successes or the achievements of other people do not signify an absence of your own, identity or an absence of yourself, right? Oftentimes we see something amazing and we're like, oh, I didn't do that. I must be, worse or I must be inferior. But the reality is like becoming comfortable in yourself and just, being it. I know it's difficult not to be affected, but I think just building, a greater sense of confidence in who you are as a person rather than just like, feeling that every single success you see on a social media platform means that you are lacking in some way. So just, that fundamental fulfillment like of one's, identity.
yeah, and I just before we just wrap it up here, and I want to thank Debbie again for coming on. I just want to say that there are a lot of good communities on social media. We try to make a relatable podcast from a teen perspective that people can watch, hopefully relate to. But if it's not us, that's okay. You can go and find many people on social media who are talking about mental health. So anything that you can find on social media where you can relate to, feel part of a community, that's good and embrace that. So I just want to say that, it doesn't, as like I say, hopefully it's us, but it does not have to be us. Go and find a good community on social media because these algorithms can promote, if you're engaging a lot with a good community, you can become a part of that. So there is a good side to it. Unfortunately, it skews to the bad side, but there is light at the end of the tunnel.
Hmm. And before we go, I just want to ask Debbie, usually we ask people to one more time just mention like their practice in case anyone who's listening wants to just get in touch with you. Where's a good place they can just do that?
Yeah. Can I just add one more
Oh,
thing?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I mean, I think this is a huge topic. We just scratched the surface. There was so much more when I was reading over your stuff. There was so much more stuff that I thought we could really get into. So happy to have more conversations about it with anybody who wants to talk about it. But yes, you can reach me at dstrauss at northsuburbanpsych.com is my email. You can find me on Psychology Today. Again, I'm Debbie Strauss, and I'm a licensed clinical social worker in Northbrook.
All right, perfect.
And
Well,
I
Ben,
commend you guys. What you're doing is awesome. It
thank
really
you.
is. I
We
really
appreciate
appreciate
that.
it.
Thank you. Ben, do we have anything else?
Yeah, so we're gonna have more episodes coming up soon. Obviously, you can view our presence on social media as well.
Hmm.
Ironic, but we are on social media as well. We don't promote, bad content. We just promote mental health content, so it's okay. But yeah,
All right. Well, my name's
Can I add
Ethan.
one more thing?
Oh,
yeah,
yep.
of course, of
Go
course.
ahead.
I'm so sorry.
No, it's all right.
But you had talked about some of the good uses and bringing awareness to mental health. I think for kids who are marginalized, like especially the LGBTQ plus kids, I think that there are some really good resources online for kids who cannot talk to or feel like they cannot
Mm,
talk to somebody in person, like their parents don't get it or they don't have a group of friends at home who understand. I think there can be some real value in that. So I just wanted to put that out there.
mhm, for sure. Well, like Ben mentioned, we're gonna keep making these episodes. I know we had a little bit of a break with back to school, but be on the lookout for a lot more episodes. Um, but that's it for today. My name's Ethan,
I'm Ben.
I'm Kabir.
and just remember, your mind matters.